How you doing? Happy to see you. How are you doing? What's going on? You guys want to hang out? Let's watch some TikToks. Oh, hope you're having a good day. I am. Hello. Good morning on a Thursday morning. It's a Thursday morning. I hope you're doing well. All right. Let's do it. Ooh, hold on. The beat drops here. Isn't that satisfying? And then it comes in big, but on the and. Okay, yeah. All right.
About having a text messages mean to an anxious person. You're mad at me. You're mad at me. You're mad at me. You are writing a dissertation of why you are mad at me. See, this one's a little tricky, so at first glance it seems like you're not mad at me, but based on that period, I know that you're mad at me. Everyone is dead, and also you're mad at me. Text messages mean to an anxious person. You're mad at me. You're mad at me. You're mad at me. You are writing a dissertation of why you are mad at me. See, this one's a little tricky, so at first glance it seems like you're not mad at me, but based on that period, I know that you're mad at me. Everyone is dead, and also you're mad at me. Text messages mean to an anxious person. You're mad at me. You're mad at me.
I know we're watching on repeat.
You're mad at me. You are writing a dissertation of why you are mad at me. See, this one's a little tricky, so at first glance it seems like you're not mad at me, but based on that period, I know that you're mad at me. Everyone is dead, and also you're mad at me.
There's a creator. He talks about like the philosophy of language and how language evolves and like etymology. Does anyone know who I'm talking about? It's a kid with glasses, short hair. He said something really cool. He was like, because text message vernacular is so efficient, and you're kind of essentially trying to communicate the message in the least amount of words, adding a period is like a second form of communication that is somewhat unnecessary, because a period would normally kind of delineate like the start and stop of a sentence, and then like or the completion of an idea. So a period would be like the completion of an idea, then moving on to the next idea. So then when you add a period onto a standalone sentence in a text message, it became like an assertion of aggression. And so like, right, like it's like boom, like yes, like I am asserting myself, pushing something, almost like a confrontation psychologically, which I think is so funny. Isn't it weird how like we've kind of come up with almost these like this milieu of like social etiquette within periods and all that stuff? It's like manners went away and etiquette of speech came in. That's not exactly 100% true, but kind of funny. Someone says, don't read into things. Yeah, well, we're all worried we're going to get abandoned and confronted, and our feelings are going to get hurt. All right, next video.
You're mad at me.
Okay, talk me through some emotional punishment as a child.
What if I told...
Okay, talk me through some emotional punishment as a child. I would say the go-to was silent treatment. Sorry to interrupt, are you wearing earphones? Oh, sorry, habit. They're always in. I'm always listening to music, or I have a podcast on before I fall asleep because I just hate the silence.
This isn't pre-recorded, Ben.
Oh,
Someone in the chat said so.
Okay, talk me through some emotional punishment as a child. I would say the go-to was silent treatment. Sorry to interrupt, are you wearing earphones? Oh, sorry, habit. They're always in. I'm always listening to music, or I have a podcast on before I fall asleep because I just hate the silence. Oh shit.
That hit me. I was thinking about that. I love putting in AirPods and listening to no music. It's like almost like I actually feel a lot more comfortable in the silence. But I think it's for the same reason. I had a lot of silence growing up. Like I moved around probably every year of my life for the first 15 years, living in a different place. Every year, my dad's job, we moved around a bunch. And so I just spent a lot of time playing outside in the woods, in the backyard, riding bikes around the neighborhood. And sometimes I make neighborhood friends, but I was homeschooled for most of it. So I would say, like, at least it felt this way in my memory. The majority of my childhood I spent by myself. And sometimes my little brother would come, but he was a lot younger than me. And so there's almost like a familiarity in the silence. It's a double-edged sword. It's like silence is somewhat comforting, and I feel like myself in the silence, and it feels isolating. Like my wife has pointed out, it's like when you have a problem, you go inward and you just try to figure it out in your head first, and you don't really talk about it. Most of your problems, you actually go away and you try to kind of almost isolate and think it through, and then come back when it's figured out. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's kind of how I've always lived my life. Didn't necessarily have people I could go and verbally process with. You know, like I think that like a saying growing up in my house was like, children are meant to be a blessing. And what was meant by that, the implicit thing of that, is like anything that you bring up, your presence, it should make other people feel happy and good, and shouldn't stress other people out or make the situation heavy or complicated. You know, so if you're going to show up, if you're going to be there, you should improve the scene, not make it heavier. And so I'm like, all right, if I have any heavy stuff, if I have any negative emotion, then I need to go take that and deal with it myself. Common punishment growing up was go into your room by yourself until you could come out regulated. You know, so there was like this internal thing for me around my childhood hurt, which is like the hard stuff you figure out on your own. And then you bring the good part of yourself to other people. And so watching a video like that, it's like, oh, the silent treatment. You can be really averse to it, or it's like you weirdly make your home in it. Anyone else relate to that in the chat? TikTok? Oh, don't worry, Ben, you're fine. I'm just being funny. Yeah, anyone relate to that? Whoa, we got like 500 people here on TikTok. That's weird. That's not normal. Hi, everybody. Happy to see you. Yeah. Kadala says, yep. I lived in that silent treatment for years. On Instagram, I always get the silent treatment when my husband is mad, and so it's tough for me. Yeah. Silence is powerful. I think that silence is one of those things that always has a message. Silence always has something implicit when you kind of use it as like a relational thing, like you're kind of like pushing against someone, or you're punishing someone by going silent. I mean, here's the hard part too, is like I think a lot of us that grew up and would look back at our parents and be like, oh, they gave me the silent treatment. It might be that. It also might be that our parents were overwhelmed and they didn't know what to say, so they shut down or dissociated. And so in high intensity moments, they dissociated and they didn't know what to say. And so we experienced that as the silent treatment. Fine. That's not to invalidate that, but I wonder how much of it was then trying to bite their anger. I know for me, I'll just speak honestly, like with my kids, so much of the time I have toddlers. When I'm really frustrated or angry, I'm going to take the gum out of my mouth. I feel like I'm chomping in the microphone. Gross. I have nowhere to put my gum. No, I'm just joking. I'm not going to put that. For anyone who's like, this is pre-recorded. It's not. I think sometimes, like, so much of the time, like, I'll notice myself in a conflict with my kids and I'll, like, get really frustrated, and then I'll try to, like, clamp down on that, right? I'm trying to regulate. I'm trying to, like, not raise my voice or lose my temper or come off harsh. And so then I get quiet, and there's almost kind of a shutdown, but it's more like me trying to keep the lid on something in me than me trying to punish the kid. Like, it's not that thought out. I think about that all the time when it comes to childhood trauma. Like, I'm going into the next few weeks really thinking about childhood trauma. I'm going to be doing some lives on trauma, a lot of content on trauma. I'm doing a live event in like a month and a half. Or maybe just next month. I don't remember. Next month, I think, on trauma. You'll hear more about it. But so much of the traumatic things that happen to us or that our parents do to us come with very, very little thought, like very little forethought. It's hardly ever strategic. That's something that's always surprised me, I think, just as a therapist working through things. Like even a statement like, my mom is so controlling. It's like, maybe, and maybe it's just that her worry is so compulsive and it just like rises up and out of you or her, and mom is so triggered by just every bit of pain that you go through, or every potential world where you experience pain or do something wrong, and it just emerges, and her default to that is to like grab on and then try to fix. And so, yeah, controlling, sure, but from her point of view, or it's rarely ever intended that way, I think, with the women that I've worked with whose kids have accused them of being controlling. It's like pervasive fear blocks the love they have in their heart for their kid. And that's not to say that the impact on the kid isn't experienced as controlling, and it's damaging, sure. It's just more complicated, I think, than just the simplistic labels. April on Instagram says, yeah, that's my sister. Queen says, would you say the silent childhood would be considered trauma? Sure. I think that trauma is really anything that overwhelms you and then changes how you interact with the world in a way that makes everything worse. That's like my definition. Everyone has a definition for trauma. That's not the same thing as PTSD. I think PTSD is a different thing. We can talk about that briefly if you want. It's like you can think there's like maybe a spectrum of like, severe and like, I don't know, chill. Yeah, let's be super clinical. Okay, so there's like the chill and the severe. It's not so much that like, on the idea of trauma, it's not that something more severe is necessarily just something more intense. Like huge car accidents can be severe. Like near-death experiences, falling off a cliff, can be severe. Watching someone die in front of you can be severe, But then also like something like silence, like I remember learning about the term latchkey kid. I didn't know what that meant, but then I had a boomer, explain it to me, and it's like, well, for some folks who grew up maybe like let's say 70s, 80s, who both parents worked, you come home after school and you would just latchkey, you just unlock the house yourself and just hang out at home after school until your parents got off work, like 6 or 7. Same for maybe like an hour or two before you're doing your homework and then you're off the bed. And so it was like most of their lives were just kind of on their own or with their siblings. And you could say, well, is that traumatic? And then it's like, well, that's not overwhelming, like in the same sense of like watching someone die in front of you is overwhelming. But if you stack it up, it's like lots of little things can actually pile you up, almost just kind of like death by 1,000 paper cuts, So you could say like, oh, well, there's like this huge falling off a cliff, that's a big situation. Cliff. But then like silence. The hard thing about silence is you try to give any one example and it feels really small. Well, I came home and my mom wasn't there, and so I just watched TV and made myself a snack. It's like no one's like, wow, sounds traumatic. Any one instance, any one memory isn't traumatic, but when you stack them all on top of each other, there's a loneliness and isolation. Because what happens when you have a hard day at school and then you come home and there's no one just to process it with you, or you get bullied and there's no one there to notice, and you're trying to calm down and you're just kind of by yourself in your house, and you're 9. Like how does that impact someone when that happens week over week over week? Or I don't know, maybe your boyfriend or girlfriend broke up with you freshman year, and you're depressed and you're sad and you're feeling awful, and there's no one there to just talk you through it and to process it with. So you just kind of internalize it. And who knows what you internalize? I mean, you're a freshman. So like part of like, I think what's so traumatic about like, what we term emotional neglect, It's like we had to figure it out on our own, and so then the conclusions that we come to about the hard things in our life, we also figure out on our own. And that is actually more heavy than you might think, because you might conclude after a bad breakup in high school, well, I'm just ugly. And that's maybe like a ridiculous conclusion, because it's like, well, hold on. It's not just like, it's not ugliness. Like it's likely their immaturity, your immaturity, poor communication, bad expectations, the circumstance, like, I don't know, whatever, your young love. A grown-up could come in a validating way, just like, let me contextualize this, just ground it in reality, and then reassure you your life's not over. It's going to be fine. We're going to make it out. Like, and so just having like a grown-up to like, hey kid, it's not, your life's not over. You're not a miserable failure. You're going to be fine. Like in a heartfelt, warm way where you really trust it. It's like, whew, nice. Okay. Thank goodness. And it can kind of ground it. But if a kid's just by themselves, processing all of that alone, or maybe you're with like a really aggressive peer, then it's like, well, I'm ugly and I'm terrible. And then like, well, if I were just skinnier, then I wouldn't, be rejected as much. And then you stop eating. And it's like, so you have all these almost maladaptive, negative ways of coping and understanding, and these destructive beliefs that sink in. And so you could think like, okay, well, hey, these small little dots, this isn't trauma. But then I'm like, well, hold on, like, because all the little things that happen in between, the conclusions you make about yourself, the coping mechanisms you try to lean into to try to make it better. You started smoking weed because you felt like you were a failure at school. You started, I don't know, taking intense peptides and drugs because you were looks maxing. Like, I don't know, like there's the foolishness of childhood, which is just normal, developmentally normal, isn't mitigated and contextualized and matured by people who are just watchful. So that's part of, I think, what's traumatic about silence. It's the loneliness in and of itself, and then almost like the weeds that grow up in the soil. That's really a good analogy for it. It's like no one's there to weed through the soil. And so the weeds grow up, and then nothing good can grow, and then all the fruit's kind of choked out, and yeah. And then we're like, well, unless you kind of went to war or fell off a cliff or you were abused, then you don't really have trauma. And I'm like, I don't know, man. People can suffer in all sorts of ways. And then that suffering can... Another good analogy is like a wound that gets infected. It's not obvious that just the intense falling off a cliff stuff is the trauma, and everything else is just normal life. Things can spin out in pretty hard ways. Amanda says, this is so validating. I always second guess if it was trauma or I was just too sensitive. Yeah, sensitive in my mind too, Amanda, is like not... Sorry, I'll put this up. Yeah, like that's a really great thought. Amanda, like, I don't know, does anyone do film photography in the chat? Anyone ever got a film camera or even used a Polaroid? Anyone ever used a Polaroid before? I have a Polaroid. I got one where you can really adjust the settings, and I was frustrated because I was trying to use a Polaroid but without the flash, because you always got to use the flash with the Polaroid. And I was in my house taking pictures of my kids, and all the photos came out black, like you can't see anything, and that was frustrating. And then I was taking photos outside, and then accidentally turned the flash on, and I was taking a picture with the flash outside, and then it was like way too bright, and I was like, oh gosh. And I just realized like that film, that Polaroid, is like set to a certain sensitivity, right? It's like the Polaroid's like an average, of something. But think like if you were to use film for like nighttime photography, you'd want that film to be pretty sensitive. And why? It's like, well, you want it to be able to pick up light in the night sky. You want it to be able to see twinkling stars. And so it's got to be pretty sensitive in order to pick up that light. But if you took that same film to the beach and took a photo, it'd be all blown out, right? It'd be all white because it would be overwhelmed, And so when I hear, like, Amanda, this is good, it's like, oh man, I just worried I was too sensitive. My thought is like, well, that's awesome. Like, sensitivity also can lend itself to creativity, to philosophy, to just having really deep insights in the human spirit, to feeling things deeply in a good and bad way. That's not a bug. I think that's a feature, mostly. And then you go through life, and if you, let's say, your nighttime photography, living your life on the beach, it can feel like, well, something's wrong with me. But that's not true. There's a setting. Yeah. Good. Oh, thanks, Olivia. That's really kind. Let's get to some questions in a minute. I'll take that question, but let's watch another video. Yeah.
If I'm being honest.
Okay.
What if I told you that your love languages are actually your unmet needs?
Oh,
If you're somebody who
sorry.
needs acts
Wrong-
of service, you probably grew
wrong
up in a
thing.
household where you had
Come on.
needs.
Getting your sister.
What if I told you that your love languages are actually your unmet needs? If you're somebody who needs acts of service, you probably grew up in a household where you had to do everything yourself. So somebody doing something for you feels like love. Words of affirmation, you probably grew up in a household where you weren't validated very often. So now as an adult, you need that even more. Quality time because your emotional needs weren't being met. Physical touch, you lacked safe, consistent affection. So of course you crave it deeply. And gifts because you learned that love is shown through actions and not just words, especially tangible items. Me personally, I didn't grow up with consistency. I grew up in a household with chaos. So right now, my biggest love language is somebody that actually shows me affection, attention, and true love. What if I told you that your love languages are actually your unmet needs? If you're somebody who needs acts of service, you probably grew up in a household where you had to do everything yourself. So somebody doing something for you feels like love. Words of affirmation, you probably grew up in a household where you weren't validated very often. So now as an adult, you need that even more. Quality time because your emotional needs weren't being met. Physical touch, you lacked safe, consistent affection. So of course you crave it deeply. And gifts because you learned that love is shown through actions and not just words, especially tangible items. Me personally, I didn't grow up with consistency.
Sorry. I like sometimes I need to hear it twice just to like absorb it. But I thought that was like the most brilliant thing ever. I was almost sometimes I'll see a video like that and I'm so mad I didn't think of that first. You know, it's like oh, because it's like right there. It's like you're apple picking and someone points out, it's like there's an apple right in front of your face and you're like, oh, I didn't even see it right there, because it's so true. It's like the love language thing, being connected to childhood needs. Man, that is a light bulb. You know, I think that we have these deep attachment needs that are true of everyone, no matter what culture you grow up in, no matter what your personality is, your genetic makeup. We all have a need to feel seen, safe, and soothed. Seen, safe, soothed. And each of those love languages, you know, kind of comes in through a different door. The love languages is just a good, it's just a good heuristic and kind of metaphor. It's not really empirically validated that those are the 5 empirical love languages. I mean, there's been studies looking into it and just kind of found like, oh, so it's helpful for some people not. It's like the Enneagram, you know, there's no real science behind it, but it's cool. It helps people talk. And my thought is like, so my love languages very much are kind of words of affirmation, physical touch. And then when I think about my childhood, like, yeah, I didn't get a lot of that. Didn't get a lot of physical touch, didn't get a lot of words of affirmation. Didn't get a lot of quality time either. You know, I think quality time is also one of those. And that my warmest memories with my parents were when we had quality time, you know, so, you know, that was an element of it too. It's just like the good stuff was also the quality time. What about you in the chat? Like, what are your love languages? And did you get that in childhood? I'll write them out for you so that you can see them. What are they? Physical touch. Here, I'll put it on the screen. Physical touch. I also kind of like having the chat on the screen too. You mind if I add it real quick? I've never thought about having the chat and my... Well, you can see the chat like on Instagram and TikTok. You can just look below and see it, but on YouTube and Facebook. Let me try something real quick. Nice. Okay, now I have the chat. There as well. Good. Okay. Now on Facebook and YouTube, they can see the chat as the good people here on TikTok and Instagram can. All right, physical touch. Quality time. Words. Words of affirmation. Gifts. What am I forgetting? Physical touch, quality time, words of affirmation, gifts. Which one am I forgetting, team? Acts of service, thanks. Thanks, Joel. Yeah, so acts of service. So these are like the big ones. It's which one of these did you have? And then what didn't you have as a kid? And then what speaks the most to you? Here's what's interesting is my wife, like, she really connects to acts of service, but that's because her dad did so good in acts of service. Like, that's how her dad actually expressed love, was through acts of service. And then because of that, acts of service is so meaningful for her in the present. So it's not just that I think you have a love language, and maybe that would round out what the video is saying. It's not so much that your love languages are just because you didn't get it. It can also be because that was like a highway that you did receive it. So it's insightful on both angles. So a lot of people saying acts of service. I also wonder sometimes if women in particular really connect to acts of service and quality time more so than men. That's just a hypothesis. Acts of service, all of them, yeah. Yeah. Words of affirmation, Amanda says, yeah. Physical touch, Andrea says, yeah. Yeah, I'll go back here. What do you connect to? Yeah. Oh yeah, I was the only woman in my group that connected to physical touch. I think that, like, for physical touch in women, like, that gets conflated with sexual touch, obviously. So I think when it comes to romantic relationships, those are different, obviously. I think that physical touch is something like reassurance, physical grounding, the being with in a moment of overwhelm, back rubs, not just affection or sensual touch, like holding hands and kissing. It can be that, but it's more so like physical reassurance and closeness. Like we're sitting in a movie together, and my leg is touching your leg, or my hand is holding your hand. Like it's almost like there's a containment or like a spatial heldness that is really important, not just romantically. I even find this with my male friends. Like, it's really meaningful when they just kind of reach over, grab my shoulder, there's a hug. Like, even just like physical kind of like roughhousing and just kind of grappling or like tugging on arms. Like, it's almost kind of just reminds you to get in your body. There's like an embodiment element to it in the relationship that's so meaningful, in physical touch. And I think women are more likely to be violated through physical touch, right? So like 1 in 4 women experience, an SA event before 18, when for boys it's 1 in 12, so I think that women are more likely to have trauma around physical touch. So maybe that's a road that is more often blocked off. That's a theory. I don't know. What do you think? Gifts is statistically, like when you do surveys of people, gifts is the one that people relate to the least. Quality time and physical touch. I get emotional when I get gifts. Affirmation and acts. Yep, Brandon, that's good. Yeah, S113 says, I don't think I was shown consistent expressions of love growing up. Yeah. Safe physical touch. That's right, Susan. Oh, I think the reason acts of service because I felt a lot of pressure growing up. That's interesting. Yeah, the pressure being connected to the love language too. Yeah, I love acts of service because I do a lot on my own. Yeah, I think for people that really were kind of like the self-sufficient, kind of lonely types, the acts of service is very much like, I'm going to hold this burden with you. And that gesture of like, I'll hold this burden with you feels really comforting. Yeah. Anna on YouTube says something interesting. I had physical touch, acts of service. Hardly any quality time, but I enjoy solitude, and hardly any words of affirmation that I find has led to always doubting myself. Yeah, that's interesting. I think the words of affirmation thing can have a lot. Like if the attention of a compliment or an encouragement just feels like pressure and you feel embarrassed from like lots of positive words, you can have an allergic reaction to that. the reason for that, I think, even just like anthropologically, like when you look at cultures that don't give compliments or praise, that's really insightful place to look. Like think about Japanese cultures or even Chinese cultures to a degree. But like the reason is you don't want to stand out. Russian cultures are the same too. You don't want to stand out, and when you compliment someone, you really are putting them on the spot and shining a spotlight on them. And if your survival strategy was to blend in and like going unnoticed was a way that you stay safe, then a compliment's kind of a threat. Yeah. Yep. I'm writing that down. I'm going to make a TikTok about that later. If you unnoticed, stay safe. Compliments are a threat. Man. Sometimes you don't realize how to say things until you say it. Yeah, Thon says I space out and look like nothing sometimes. Yeah, oh, okay, this is cool. Saria, I get so weird if I get complimented or praise. I'm Polynesian, and people are usually mean. Yeah, it's interesting because I think Russian cultures, not that Russians and Polynesians are similar on every degree, but on this degree, I think they're similar. Because there's like when you have kind of a tight-knit group that had to survive together, and it was like, and there's almost kind of like, we have to shoulder everyone together. The moment you give someone a compliment is you separate them from the group. So there's kind of like this allergy to the compliment because it puts you outside of the rest of us. When you compliment the group effort, when you compliment the values that tie us all together, then that's one thing. When you participate in ceremonies that bond us together, that's one thing. But a compliment is actually a rather modern thing to praise and give out tons and tons of positive affirmation, because it's by nature it destabilizes both hierarchies and egalitarian kind of eye level planes of relations. But I won't get all technical on that front. It's interesting. Yeah, the spotlight. That's right. Yeah, and people use compliments to sell you stuff. That's right. Flattery. That's what that's used. Yeah, it's true. How do we get past being so self-aware to be able to progress in therapy? Get into the body and go slower. Pacing. It's almost always pacing in time. Notice an uncomfortable emotion and then sit with it for 30 seconds without commenting on it or spinning up a commentary on it. Cool. Let's do the next video.
Or I'm gonna make you fight a real bear outside.
I'm coming in.
Stop hitting your sister, or I'm gonna make you fight a real bear outside.
I'm coming in.
Put the caps back on your markers, or I'm gonna make you eat dry markers for dinner.
I'm coming in.
Put away your toys right now, or I'm gonna set them on fire and make you watch.
I'm coming in.
Stop hitting your sister, or I'm gonna make you fight a real bear outside.
So funny. I actually got a top comment on this one, I think. Hey yo. The most out of pocket, non-abusive yet somehow worse threats. I think it's so funny. You're just like you're just desperate and you're overwhelmed and you're like, listen, if you don't listen to me, something terrible is gonna happen. And it's not like I'm gonna hurt you, but and then you just like think it's something out of pocket. Everything's gonna be on fire. Not you, but everything you care about that's ethically permissible to burn, like your toys. It's so funny. I laughed so hard at that. Oh, funny. Man, sometimes I just feel like any parents in the room is just like we're grasping, trying to do a good job, yet we're trying to like survive the moment. It's so normal. Man, that's so good. All right, next video.
attempt to feel. Codependency is managing other people to attempt to feel safer. People pleasing is keeping others comfortable to avoid potential rejection or abandonment. Perfectionism is controlling yourself to attempt to earn love. And they are all survival habits, brilliant ways you learned to attempt to secure safety, belonging, and worth from outside yourself instead of from within when that felt like the only option. When those habits start to shape how you move through every relationship, it can feel like your sense of safety lives in other people's reactions to you. That's the thread that ties these traits together. It's what I call emotional outsourcing. It's the nervous system's way of trying to guarantee safety, belonging, and worth through others when it wasn't safe to hold these things inside yourself. Seeing it this way helps us to meet these patterns with compassion, love, and care, and not shame, so we can begin to reconnect with our own internal sense of safety and basic goodness again, instead of shaming ourselves for having brilliant survival skills. Codependency.
I disagree with this video. I'll give you a little hint. We'll watch it one more time. I think that she's using an individualistic frame and kind of an ethnocentric frame to view this. Essentially, the claim is something like, all of your self-concept and security and worth and value is supposed to be an internal experience, not something that's shared amongst relationships and that is mutually reinforced, shared, secure within close relationship, which is a more traditionalist or collectivist view. And I think that if we're going to have a truly multicultural appreciation for the concept of the self, we can't pathologize collectivist conceptions of self, which are intrinsically interrelated conceptions of self. So let's try watching that one more time in less fancy words. Who you are is not just what you feel inside. Who you are is also what you share and the experiences and the feelings that you share with other people. Okay.
Shaming
she's saying that that's not the case. I think that is the case, but I'll explain. So she's saying that when you put your feelings and your value in your relationships and other people, then that turns into people pleasing and codependency and all these things. And I think that sometimes we overcorrect here and we pathologize having normal, distressing experiences when our relationships aren't the way we want them to be, and then feeling really bad. And we're like, oh, that means that your self-worth is low and da-da-da. I'm like, nah, probably not. It just means that like the self is something we share with others. And so then when those relationships with others go bad, it's normal to feel bad. You know, like, but let's watch it one more time. I'll explain more.
Codependency is managing other people to attempt to feel safer. People pleasing is keeping others comfortable to avoid potential rejection or abandonment. Perfectionism is controlling yourself to attempt to earn love. And they are all survival habits, brilliant ways you learned to attempt to secure safety, belonging, and worth from outside yourself instead of from within when that felt like the only option. When those habits start to shape how you move through every relationship, it can feel like your sense of safety lives in other people's reactions to you. That's the thread that ties these traits together. It's what I call emotional outsourcing. It's the nervous system's way of trying to guarantee safety, belonging, and worth through others when it wasn't safe to hold these things inside yourself. Seeing it this way helps us to meet these patterns with compassion, love, and care, and not shame, so we can begin to reconnect with our own internal sense of safety and basic goodness again, instead of shaming ourselves for having brilliant survival skills. Codependency is managing a...
You said that is doubling? The audio is doubling on TikTok? Well, that's a bummer. I don't want that to be the experience. Yeah, tell me what it's sounding like there. Yeah, it is. It's doubling. And there's a wicked echo. Sounds scratchy. Sorry. Shoot. Well, how do I fix that? I don't know. Let's think together. Let's think together. Oh, wait. I think I know. Wait. Hold the phone. Hold it. Hold your phone. Hold it. Hold it. Okay, now try.
Codependency is managing other people to attempt to feel safer. People pleasing is keeping others comfortable to avoid potential rejection or abandonment. Perfection.
All right, well, I'll figure that out for next time. Sorry. Oh, someone says much better, but then someone said still doubling. Still same. Bah. All right, I'll figure it out later. Sorry, team. Well, here's what she's saying. She's like, essentially, when we're like codependent or like we feel all distressed and emotions and we're people pleasing, it's like we're outsourcing our sense of self to somebody else. It's emotional outsourcing. We're like tuning our whole emotional world to the reaction of another person, and so then that's bad. And then so in my mind, I'm like, certainly, like I think someone's like, wait, is someone questioning if I'm a therapist? He's literally a therapist. What's his degree? Google it. I'm a therapist. All right, so I totally lost my train of thought. Emotional outsourcing. I think that we can program our emotions to the reaction of another person. That's obviously not positive. That's not beneficial. It's distressing, and I don't think we can fully take that away. I think that has a lot to do with the emotional needs that we're getting met through that person. So my theory is like, and this aligns with like 120 years worth of like psychological research, is you do emotionally regulate with other people. You mirror with other people. We have things called mirror neurons. We are more neuroplastic when we're learning with others. We can deal with pain better when we're physically touching other people. Like our entire nervous system and body hormonal structure is impacted and augments with other humans. And so like there's no world, I think, where the self is supposed to be this entirely self-contained entity where we're just totally chill and unimpacted by other people. That is something I hear TikTok therapy world and Instagram therapy influencer types selling in droves that I just don't think is accurate. It's some, I don't know where it comes from. I think it's some new agey thing. So I just, I reject that. I think that we are interlinked with other people. And I also think we have to be mindful of how much we're investing in each individual relationship. We get to choose where to place our emotional needs, which relationships to place our emotional needs. You know, it's not really a choice of if, it's where and who. It's like you do need other people reaffirming and reassuring you and encouraging you and reminding you of who you are. You need your tribe. And if you notice that someone in particular is like really distressing you, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's a particular romantic partner, maybe it's a boss, then you need to redistribute the emotional needs that you're getting met. And maybe your mom is not the best investment of all of that sense of self. Maybe you need other maternal figures in your life that are encouraging you and seeing the parent that you're evolving into and encouraging you. And then that, interestingly enough, will settle some of the distress you feel around your own mom. So for example, I feel really stressed around mom. She's so judgy on how I'm raising my kids. She thinks I'm spoiling them. And I'm like, all right, you need older women or parental figures in your life that encourage you and see what you're trying to do and affirm you and are around and like giving you the nod of like, you're doing it. Good job. Hey, you did great there. That will settle your nervous system. And then when mom's judgy, it's less like you're like starving and thirsty and you're trying to get breadcrumbs from mom. It's like, no, I'm actually on a full stomach. And so when mom doesn't give me the affirmation that I need, it's like disappointing. There's grief, but I'm not left lacking. Does that make sense? Those relationships are so imperative. Yeah. Someone's spamming? I don't know what he's asking. Co-regulation happens in safe relationships. 100%. Am I getting defensive? No, I mean, you can question that. I don't care. That's fine. Yeah, you were agreeing with the outsourcing part. Right, I think we do outsource it. We do outsource it to other relationships. That's part of our human nature. I'm asking what makes you a professional or an expert on trauma. That's a long explanation. I can talk about it. I don't claim to be an expert on trauma. I'm a licensed therapist. I specialize in it. I'm learning. I'm growing in expertise. I was trained by a Harvard psychiatrist who was at Bessel van der Kolk's Trauma Center for 30 years, and he supervised me for several years and looked over my sessions and trained me in the neurophysiology of trauma and trauma intervention. So trained in about 3 different trauma interventions, EMDR, IFS. Worked with trauma victims for years, mostly kids with maladaptive sexual behavior. So, yeah. I'm teaching a mental health class. What's one thing you wish more people understood? I'll end on that question. What's one thing I wish more people understood? The thing that's going to heal you is not likely the big aha moment. It's in the insight. It's more likely going to be the safe relationship of someone who really sees you and can really hold space for the parts of you that you usually try to hide from other people. It's knownness with a person of safety that transforms you. Yeah. And the blend of both validation and feeling seen, but then also calling you into the person you could be. Moving from just coping with trauma and suffering in life to transforming it, grieving it, and then stepping into your values. Yeah, that's a good summary. I lied. I'm going to answer one more question. I like these. What path should one take if EMDR does not work for them? Why didn't it work? Because if you're a therapist, here's the thing: EMDR therapists are tricky because you can take an EMDR class in a weekend and then be okay to practice EMDR on a client. You want someone who's actually done it for a minute. So either EMDR certified or an EMDR consultant. If they're a consultant, that means they've had over 1,000 hours being supervised by people. So I would go to someone who has more experience. If it was overwhelming, if you left with like a stomach ache, overwhelmed, or it didn't really work, or it was weird, I'd find something with more experience. Someone with experience is going to be able to walk you through it slowly. You're going to be able to make a lot of quick progress. You should feel safe with that person. That's my honest answer. I like EMDR. Don't give up too quick. I'm not saying it's for everybody, but I would stick it out. Not with that therapist, with someone else. All right. Hey, well, I enjoyed hanging out with you. I'll talk to you all next time. Have a great morning. It's fun spending the morning with you. See you around. Bye-bye. And end.